So thanks everybody for joining this week. I didn't realize there was an overlap, but thanks for coming across from the other presentation for those that joined that one. So this is the second episode in the fourth series. So Marcelo and I are here. I'll be presenting this one. Okay, so last week Marcelo talked about the improving interoperability through Open BIM. So just put that video up this morning, so on the YouTube channel. And today I'm going to be talking about bringing Revit families into Archicad. The function has been around a couple of versions, so I'll go through how to download that, how to find and how to get them in, and how to update the objects inside Archicad. And then next week, Marcelo will talk about Paramo and Python. So I think that'll be quite interesting.
Well, let's see if it will be me or
yeah,
I need to get help from someone in case they don't release it for Mac by then.
In case I can't get the Mac build currently. And then Ricardo will be the week after. So I think he's here currently. So today I'm going to go through bringing the Revit families, so RFA objects. The add-on actually includes RVT and RFA, but I'm only going to cover the RFA part today. So let me switch over to Archicad, but actually before that, I will just go to the browser to show where you can download. Actually, if you have Archicad 24, then you will be notified through the Action Center that there is an update available and you can download. I have to remember where the Action Center is. Info, okay. So here under updates, it will indicate that there is the add-on available, but for any previous version, we'll have to get that from somewhere else. So let me just try to explain this in a bit more detail. So let's go to for Archicad 24. So this is now distributed by Graphisoft and developed by Graphisoft. So it allows you to import RFA and also exchange with RVT. For example, you can hotlink an RVT file. Generally, we don't recommend the RVT part purely because we think IFC is still a far better format. And I'll explain a little bit kind of why, but today I'm just going to go through the RFA part, so the families that we can get from Revit. So this is for Archicad 24, so you can go through the Action Center and download from the website here. If you're using a previous version, then you'll actually have to go to BIM 6X, so BIM 6X. To download the files. So they had previously distributed the add-on for previous versions. So you can see here for 21, 22, and 23 for Archicad for the 3 versions, and now 24 through the Graphisoft website. They are free. So it does say add to cart. You just have to put in like a few details, but it's a free add-on. Okay, so this RFA and RVT add-on is actually developed by, or the code or development behind it is actually through the Open Design Alliance, so the ODA, and they are the ones that have actually created like the DWG formats available for multiple parties and things like this. So we're a member of this, and I think Autodesk has just become a member of this. So this is kind of where the add-on is kind of coming through. So it's kind of an open format, but the open format kind of actually had to be reverse engineered through this organization to allow other companies to be able to use it. So it's not a perfect format, so it's not exactly what you get in Revit, but I think the RFA part is actually pretty good to get content that you can't get natively. So let's go to a few other websites. So I've kind of mostly just done this by Google. So one site, for example, is the NBS so the UK system for the National BIM Library. So here there's quite a lot of Revit objects. So I've downloaded a few already. Another one is, let me just close. This one is BIM Objects. Actually, a lot of their objects they do have in Archicad formats. When I was searching for objects between Archicad versus Revit, generally there was twice as many Revit objects than Archicad objects. But I found that a lot of the Revit objects were not the best quality, to be honest. So,
and the other thing is also that the way how the Revit families work and how the Archicad library parts work is that let's say one kitchen object in Archicad, we can have more parameters because GPL allows us to get more variations of it. So yeah, it really depends on how things are done. It's why I think most of the time it looks like that there's a lot more available for about Revit families in these websites.
Yeah. So obviously try to find an Archicad native object, but obviously if you can't, then we can also try to find Revit families as well. So these were just a couple of the sites that I went to, the MBS and BIM Objects. Had a quick look at this market. I'm not sure, I haven't actually tried downloading yet. And another one was this Archicad site that had quite a few objects as well. So I've already downloaded a few. So let me just go into Archicad. And the way that they're constructed are very different. So as Marcelo said, the native Archicad objects are scripted in a way that is much more flexible, I think, than a Revit family can be. So it can be more parametric and kind of be any shape almost, or any variation of that shape. So you're more likely to, and it's a smaller file format as well. Okay, so after I've installed that add-on, so the RVT Geometry Exchange, I will then get a new command under File, Libraries and Objects. And here there's Import RFA as GDL Objects. So this will appear after you install the add-on. So I'm just going to click on this. And just need to find the objects that I've downloaded previously. Okay, so I've downloaded a few already, just to kind of show you the difference. So let's start with kind of a fairly basic kind of hand dryer that I downloaded, and it has the RFA extension to the file, and open. So on opening, it will actually process and check the file. So it needs to check whether it's in a file format that Archicad can read. So I think Archicad can import anything from 2015 to 2020, so not the most recent version of RFA files, but I think quite a large window. Most objects probably online probably won't be in the newest version anyway. And it will also check to see if there's any 3D content inside that object as well. So if it's not the right file format, then it could throw up an error. Or if there's no 3D geometry in it, then it may also throw up an error, just because there's nothing to import as a result. Also during the open, it tries to check the RFA sort of type. So whether it's going to be like a door, window, or objects. I hope in the future this gets expanded to more types, but for now we only have the 3. So if it's a door from Revit, then it will recognize that it's a door automatically on import because of this type category. So that's why we have this best match in brackets. So you can change it to something else, but it will always choose what it can read from the file itself. We have this segmentation. I tend to always leave it on the middle. If it's a highly detailed element, you may want to go fewer just to avoid to cut down the polygon count a little bit. but I would generally always keep this in the center. And only after importing, like checking the how many polygons and check the kind of smoothness, whether you need to re-import at a different level. So I'm going to hit import, and it says that it was successfully added to the embedded library. So also take care of it. Once it goes to the embedded library, it's only for this project. So we may have to then export and put it into a folder afterwards. So hit OK. And then from the object tool, I go to the embedded library, and here I can see the new object that just got imported. So I'm going to place this, just have a look at the 3D, and then we'll come back to the settings in a second. Okay. So just have a quick look at this in 3D. Okay, so here's the object that got imported from a family. So if I open up the settings, so during the conversion between RFA to an object, Archicad puts in some settings to kind of try to make it a little bit more of a more useful. So it's not just a dumb object, but there's at least a few different settings. It's still not really parametric, but what we can do is, for example, edge snapping. So this is a checkbox on and off. And what that means is that on the floor plan, when you hover the cursor over the edges, then you'll get snapping to all the edges of the object. If it's a very complex element, I would generally turn this off to avoid any speed issues. So it does take a little bit more resources to have this snapping. So if it's a super complex element, then I would turn this off. Because it's non-parametric, we then can enable stretching, but it will stretch and distort. So when I check this, then the sizes become enabled. And for example, I can say one of these dimensions is bigger, and you can just see that it just stretches the object. But this can be quite useful if it's, for example, furniture that you just kind of want a indication of the element, and it doesn't have to be exact. You more want it for visualization. So I'll turn that back off. For some objects that come in, sometimes the rotation can be off just because of the way that it was modeled. Kind of maybe it was face down, and you may need to rotate it so it flips it upwards. So here we can also rotate the object. So for example, say 90 degrees, so it's sitting flat. This is sometimes when you import, it could be laying flat and you just need to elevate it up. The 2D representation, so we can change the fill representation, the project line on the floor plan. Surfaces tries to import based on the Revit surfaces. So all of these are built into the object, but we can check any of these and then override with an Archicad native surface. Yeah. And these are all defined within the RFA. So the next part, so the visibility, this isn't always available when you import the object. So if it's been split up into kind of subcategories, the one object, then we can actually turn on and off different parts. This happens sometimes if there's an equipment and it may have a bounding box kind of shape around the entire equipment object, then this hopefully has been scripted in a way on the Revit side that allows you to turn that bounding box off. So you see the object, not just the overall kind of shape. So here we've got, currently this is only being 2 parts. Okay, so we can turn off the frame and just have the, so if I click OK. Yeah, so then that turned off the frame and only shows me the hand dryer.
So
the other, yep.
That have to do with how the object was created before, so with like two main parts?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple of like doors and windows that may have a few more options, but this is all based on how it was scripted on the Revit side, whether these parts are going to be available. The parameters. So these parameters are just sort of, I was going to say 2D information, but it's just kind of static information. So none of them are parametric. This is why by default they're disabled, just to avoid kind of confusion or editing kind of this dumb text for the object. But we can open up the object and unlock any of these if we need to edit. But we can schedule any of these anyway. So even though they're locked, we can schedule them with no problem. So just keep that in mind, that these are all just static texts. And if you do unlock, and I'll show you that shortly, how to unlock these. If you do, but I would generally not use this parameters. I would try to use the classification and properties instead of these parameters built in. Okay, so this is one object. Let me just have a look at another object. So it's going to go import.
And the textures all come through the whatever the, I could see like the name of the object.
Yeah, I don't know if that's been scripted in a way where it's, so it may not be, it actually may be cutouts of letters rather than a texture. I think it's, yeah, it's 3D.
Okay, that's modeled. Yeah, it's modeled. Okay, because I was wondering how it all came through so well.
Yeah, I don't think the textures come through, but all the colors should come through as that's been set within Revit side.
Mm-hmm.
And if they've been separate, then they will become separate items in when they import.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Yep, no worries. Okay, so let's try another one that I've downloaded before. I quite like this one. So the Herman Miller chair. So open. And it's an object. Actually, this one's a bit heavy, so I will still leave it on this one, but it is a little bit heavy, as in it's too high polygon, so it's too detailed. And this can be a problem when you import. It's also a problem when you import SketchUp kind of parts as well. Okay, so here's the Herman Miller. Okay, so it's quite a nice chair. It has a few different parts. So actually, just the back kind of bracing part can be turned off. And the surface, it has a number of different surfaces that we can change from this object. So let's place this one. Okay, so you can see the 2D preview is more like a projected preview, so it's not as simple as we would like. So I'm going to show also how we can clean this up a little bit through the object settings. And we could do the same for the for this one as well. But I'm going to have a play with this one. So to actually, I'll show you in 3D first, so I get the idea. Yeah. So you can see how highly detailed this is, and I generally don't recommend this level of detail in a BIM model.
Yeah.
So it's way too detailed.
One thing we could do is also use the polygon check tool, the polygon count, to check how many polygons it has. Do you have it there?
Yeah, I think I do. Poly count, yeah. Yeah, so I can see that this is like 14,000 polygons.
Yeah, it's quite heavy.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe when I import, I could try turning it down to kind of the lower segmentation. That could be something that would be worth checking. Or as we've shown in a previous session, we could convert this to a morph and then try to simplify it with morph. But for now, I just want to clean up the 2D appearance. So I kind of just want to quickly show how to do that. So I'm selecting this object, and this could be any object that we import. And I'm going to go into the open object, and based on the selected one. Okay, so now I'm going to have a look at the 2D script to see how it's made that 2D script. And I can see basically it's using a projection, so a 3D projection to generate that floor plan. And if I go into my 2D symbol, so this is where we can draw shapes, I can see that it's currently empty. So what I'm going to do is select all of this 2D script. I'm going to comment it out, which means that the script will totally ignore this. So just by putting the exclamation mark in front of each line means that it will totally ignore this script now to generate the 2D script or the 2D symbol. But now the 2D symbol is going to be empty. So to get a 2D symbol that I can actually do with drawing, I'm going to go to the 2D view of it. Sorry, I have to uncomment this out first to get the, because I need to generate the 2D view first. Yeah, so there's a lot of points which we can delete afterwards. So I'm just going to, this is basically the 2D appearance from that projection, from this 2D preview. I'm going to put a marquee around it. I'm going to hit copy, and it's going to copy all of the lines and everything that I see here. Close the 2D preview. Now I can comment this out because I don't need to generate this 2D preview anymore. And I'm going to go to the 2D symbol, which is something we can draw, and I'm going to hit paste.
Yeah, we could have had, let's say, a DWG of the chair or a PDF, and we could use it. In this case.
So I can see all of these hotspots. So I don't need all of this. I'm just going to hit the hotspot tool, select all, and I'm going to delete all these to simplify. And I'm going to have a look at the fills. So I'm going to select all the fills. And ideally, I would probably put this into a worksheet and do 2D consolidation. I think I can't, I'm pretty sure that I can't do fill consolidation. So let me just try to see if this works. I didn't try this earlier because I figured this fill consolidation wouldn't work in the 2D symbol. So merge, let's say okay.
So you can still consolidate here.
Sorry?
You can still consolidate here, I think.
Yeah, I didn't think that would actually be possible. I thought in VDL it might not be available.
Yeah, what it will do is it'll make all the fills become one as long as the parameters are the same.
Yeah. So it more or less, it didn't do a bad job. So I'm just going to clean up a couple of extra things like these lines in the middle. Just by adding a polygon over it, just because there was a few lines that are clearly missing.
Yeah, and the other thing you can do is get rid of one. If the fill has the contour that you want, you can get rid of all the lines and just use the fill contour to do the contour for your chair.
Yes, yeah. So if I move this fill out and then just turn on the outline, so that's an option.
Yeah.
For now, I'm going to leave these lines, but I'm just going to delete a couple of them just to simplify the 2D appearance. So, like, I would need to spend more time.
Because you will have a lot of lines.
Yeah. So if I actually look at all the lines, there's like 900 or almost 1,000 lines. So I would need to spend a little bit more time, and I could try using the line consolidation as well. But for now, I'm just going to clean up just a couple of things. and then close this window. And I can see, because there's nothing here in the 2D script, it will automatically find what's in the symbol. So I'm just going to save over this object. And let's have a look on plan, and that's the updated plan. So now this is using the symbol layer rather than the 3D projected view. So it'll actually be a little bit faster to generate, and it looks simpler on the floor plan as well. Yeah. Ideally, I'd probably want to add a little bit of script here to say, and give a parameter to the user to say, do you want to see the 2D kind of simplified preview? And maybe there's a few different levels of this preview of this floor plan symbol, like a very simple one, a more detailed one, and then maybe the projected one, for example. And I would have to write maybe 2 lines of code.
Yeah, actually, we went through this process on one of the previous Archicad Now sessions. So if you check how to, I think the name is how to create your library. Let me see. I'll put the link in the description.
Cool. So that's just a quick kind of overview of kind of what we had covered in previous sessions. So let me import a couple of other objects. So these are just objects, but we can also import doors and windows as well. So if we go into the import RFA, and let me just have a look at which one I was going to. So for example, this barn door. So more traditional kind of American kind of sliding kind of panel. And I hit OK. Then by default, at best match, it detects that it's a door automatically. So I'm going to hit OK and OK. And this time I'm going to go to my door tool under the embedded library, and I see this is the object that I just imported. Yeah. So you can see that it's kind of this more American style kind of barn door on a sliding kind of rail. So hit OK, and then I'm going to place it in here. And you can see that by default, so it won't recognize the thickness of this wall. So it's based on a different thickness. There's a couple of things that we could do, but you can see that the opening placed more or less correctly where the opening is. So it didn't put an opening over the full bounding box. It put an opening where the opening roughly should be. So I can change the thickness of this door here, but again, it's going to distort. So let's have a look at what size this was originally made at. So if I just check the distance here, so it's about 100. So what I'm going to do is just change the thickness of this wall down to 100. Okay, so it's looking better. But now I need to offset this door because I can see that it actually needs to push down to this distance, so where this casing is. And if I then use the M measure, so this is around 20 mil. And we already have this little hotspot generated for us when we import a door. And this allows us to basically move the door kind of within the cavity graphically. So I'm going to say this is maybe -20, which is the thickness of this casing, and I think that fits better. So let's have a look at this door in 3D. So I can see that it's got casing, and the opening is inside that casing. And if I look on the other side, then I can see this barn style with the rail and the connections and stuff, quite detailed. So it's not parametric in a way where I can slide this door, because we would need to do that within Archicad. But if we need an object like this, then I think this is also can be quite useful. Similar to the other object, it has a few items that I can turn on and off. So for example, I can turn the door off itself, and also the kind of frame and mullions. And sometimes this generic model are items that haven't really been classified within the RFA. So this could be things that are either bounding boxes, or it could be door, like handles and things like this, that don't actually have a classification within this part. So if I turn off, say, the door, then we've still got all the other kind of elements. Yeah, and all these surfaces we can override with native Archicad surfaces, so we don't have to use the ones coming from the RFA itself. So I have a couple of other objects, some other doors and windows. So import. Okay, that's a toilet. That's a toilet. Okay, so maybe this one. So this heritage casement window that I downloaded. So open. It again automatically detected that it was a window. If anything, I think is a skylight. I think that generally should be converted to a window with an Archicad, so we don't have a dedicated skylight element here.
Then we can go on the subtype and change, right?
Yeah, I did try that briefly. It didn't work as well as I expected it to, so I may have to experiment a little bit more regarding the skylight.
Okay.
So I'm just going to import the window, and then go to the window tool, embedded, and this is the new one that I just imported. So again, it has some visibility. This one doesn't really make sense because, like, unless you want to turn off the window panel itself and or the frame. The surfaces, it has two, so the white and the blue. I can use my own surfaces here. So okay, and place this object in here. Okay, so then that's the window imported. So you can see it's quite detailed, the geometry from it.
So they're good for transferring the geometry. The representation, if you put it, for example, projected instead of symbolic, because I imagine that in terms of projected, it will get a more accurate.
Yeah, the floor plan was showing not much detail, but
yeah, because the symbolic, yeah. So if you want, normally these kind of windows that come from manufacturers, they come with more level of detail. So if you want to use, let's say, an Archicad window for an earlier stage in terms of representation, we want a simpler symbolic representation, that's good enough. But then as soon as the level of detail is required to be higher, we can use this kind of objects. So normally manufacturers would generate them.
Yeah. Yeah, I find these type of objects best for visualization rather than documentation.
Yeah.
And yeah, so let's go one more RFA object that I downloaded. This time it was a door. Actually, it's quite similar to this one. So heritage door, okay. It's a door, yep, import, and okay. And go to my door tool, and then switch to this new door. Yeah, so you can see that it doesn't place correctly by default, but I can just shift the position through this little hotspot or put in the values. So let's have a look at that. Yeah. So I noticed this object, so it has a handle. And if I go to the parts visibility, it doesn't have one that's called handles, but I found that if I went to generic, this generic model, turn that off, then that actually turned the handle off. Because I think it wasn't classified as a handle necessarily in the RFA object. But the door, the frames, the threshold are separate parts that I can turn on and off as necessary. And let me just change a couple of the surfaces. So say timber, wood, and this one glass. Yeah. So now using standard Archicad surfaces. So even doors and windows so I can stretch the thickness. So by default, that's on. And the level of detail, sometimes this works, but I think it also has to be kind of scripted. Yeah, so I think in this case, it isn't making any difference. Yeah, it didn't make any difference. Let's check this one. Okay, this one didn't have. So I guess this one didn't have any level of detail built into it, into the RFA. This one did, but it doesn't seem to be making any difference. So maybe it wasn't well made on the RFA side, on the Revit side. Yeah. And it doesn't really make sense to stretch this because it will heavily distort. So these are off, and we can only stretch the width, not the sort of X and Y dimensions like objects can. So it's maybe a little more restricted. So let's have a look quickly at these parameters. So for example, like author says NBS, so I downloaded this from the NBS site. And if I go to my schedules and elements and open up an all openings, so just a standard template openings, here I can see all the objects, even though they're non-native Archicad elements. And if we go into scheme, I'm just going to remove just some of these fields. And we can then add anything that's listed in that parameter script. So if instead of just using add field, which is what we normally do, to add kind of the Archicad level details, to add specific details about the object within the parameter script, what we can do is go into the library part parameters through this little arrow. And at first, okay, it shows everything in the libraries at the beginning, but if I just change this to filter to used objects only, yep, so now it filters all the objects down to just those that I've used in this project. And under the embedded library, I can see these objects that I've already placed into my model. And for example, I see these NBS doors and windows. And if I select one of them, I see all of the parameters from that object. So if I say scroll down to, so let's see what we can find. I think there was an author. See if I can find, if I go sort by name, and there was author and maybe the BIM object name, and I add these and go OK. So then these get added to as fields to my schedule. So now I'm going to click OK. I can see this one is NBS. This one doesn't have the same parameter, so I would have to check these. Yeah. Possibly because there may be different names for these two objects, and this also wasn't an NBS one, so this would have totally different properties. Yeah. So we can still access that information, but I would still probably recommend to add those manually into the Archicad classification and properties rather than keeping them inside the object.
Yeah. So not just the geometry came through, but also some properties, right?
Yeah, so the data as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But all that data lives inside kind of the GDL script rather than in the Archicad properties side. So all the parameters live in the GDL side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If we do import from an RVT, then we can bring those into the classification properties. But because this is just an RFA import, then it doesn't generate the properties by default. So, yeah, but maybe that's a good thing because you wouldn't want your system to be overrun with kind of rogue properties that you may or may not want to use. Okay. Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, I think so far no one has asked any question.
Okay.
I think everyone is pretty quiet today. So if you have any questions on how we could take advantage of this, I think it's pretty much self-explanatory. Yeah, so not just only like freestanding objects like furniture we can use this technology for, but we can also bring in doors and windows, so even smarter elements that into this side. Imagine, for example, in Singapore you already have an object that is a house or shelter door with all the detail you want and things like that you had as a Revit family that downloaded from somewhere. You can use this for this method. So we have a question here. Zazar is asking, is there any way to change fixed size of import object?
Change fit size.
So in case, so when you bring it in, one of the parameters you would have is the size, right? But in case
for objects, yes.
Locked, yeah.
So there's enable stretching, which I can check, and it will unlock the sizes. So I can make this any size that I want.
So but is that always generated, that enable stretching?
Yep. Only for objects. So I think that's not available for doors and windows. For doors and windows, we only enable the thickness to be changed because maybe the thickness of the wall is a bit different. Yeah. So we enable stretching for the thickness for doors and windows, but not the other sizes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But for objects, we can change the XYZ size.
Okay. Thanks, Zazar. So Zazar says thank you.
Okay, good.
So anyone else? Any further questions?
Yeah, when I was looking at BIM objects, I noticed most of the content has Archicad files. I could only find a few examples where it was only Revit, for example. And then I found quite a few objects that were quite poor quality, generally.
Even let's say offices that are migrating from one tool to another, this could be a good solution as well. So in case you have already spent time creating a Revit family library, at least this way you can bring the geometry first, and then you can go further inside and even create further parameters inside Archicad.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to switch to kind of finalizing up, or?
Yeah, I think that this is it. I think the
Yeah, it's short and sweet. I think so.
the kind of the potential is there. It's quite obvious what we can do with this. I think in terms of workflow on how you save this into a separate folder, for objects that are brought in from other sources. It needs to be discussed with your BIM team or with someone who is more dedicated to this kind of things, other than just letting everything come in. Yeah, I think this is an important topic to bring in here, James. So
Yeah.
that if we bring it in as James is showing here, everything will end up on an embedded library. What we can do is go to the embedded library and export out from this embedded library into a dedicated folder for our from our office. And obviously, if we have doors, we put on the folder for doors. If we have windows, we put on a folder for windows. If we have furniture, we'll put on a folder for furniture. Or even furthermore, we can subdivide furniture like chairs into a folder, tables into another folder, and then we can bring it into our project file. So we always recommend to have like a sanitizing file where you create the library parts in case you need to change the textures to do some editing to it. Export it to your library folder and only then bring it into your project file. I hope that this is clear. Probably James, we still have some time. Probably you can show how we could do this. Just like create like two folders, one for the doors, one for the objects, and we choose to import them into a new file. Yeah. Sorry for throwing you this curveball now.
Not at all. Not at all. Okay. So export. And let me just check to make sure that those things exported. Yeah, now I have to find where I actually exported them. So desktop, okay. So let me just see if they exported into there. Yep. So I can see we have. Yep. So now what I can do is go to my library, add that folder, desktop, add that one, choose. This will obviously create duplicates. So now I need to go to the embedded one, select these, delete, and reload. And hopefully no errors. Okay, so now my embedded library is 0 because I exported them, added that folder, and then deleted the embedded ones. So now everything is linked to an external place. Because if I'd closed this file and didn't save, then I would have lost all these objects.
Yeah.
Was that too quick?
No, I think it's fine. Yeah. So Lester's asking, can you rename the objects after importing?
Yes.
Yes.
So if I say this heritage casement, I just delete all of this text and the heritage window, for example. So I renamed these two and go back into Archicad and just reload my library. So objects are linked to an internal ID within the object, so they're not linked to the name of the object. So we can freely rename it and it won't be missing. So I've reloaded and this one is now the simpler name and this one is also the simpler name, because they refer to an ID that's stored inside the object instead of the name. So this ID is kept. If you move this file around, the only time it gets updated or changed is if you do it like a save as the object. So then it will generate a new ID.
Mm-hmm.
So because it was the same file, it has the same ID, and it'll only generate a new one. If I, for example, open the object script and go save as, it will generate a new ID in that case. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yep. I think so. I think Lester can answer better.
Sure.
I think we don't have any further questions. I think you can wrap up now, James.
Okay, cool. So, yep, just my last few slides. Again, Marcelo mentioned this last week, so we've got our Archicad Learn portal, so learn.graphisoft.com portal. There is quite a lot of free content, and if you're on SSA, there is extra free content and discounts, I believe, to other content. Also, make sure to follow us on social media, so Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Most content we're putting onto, so I think not so much content on these, but most is on YouTube at the moment because of these webinars and things. So make sure you follow us on Graphisoft SG. If you just search this into Google, it'll be the first item that comes up. So all these webinars we post here, and I try to post within a few days of the event or the webinar. Our training, so we've got the October trainings are all up and live now. So for basic training, we've got on the 13th and 14th and 27th and 28th of October. And we've got the advanced documentation and modeling on the 20th and 21st. So the documentation being a half day and then modeling being a full day. So one after the other. So there's spots, so feel free to go to graphisoft.com/sg/courses to sign up for these. And thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. Since if there's any further questions, anyone want to open up the mic, check what other possibilities are there with this. We're glad to answer your questions. If not, we see you next week on the Paramo presentation.
Yep, I look forward to it.
Yeah, thanks a lot for supporting us and being around again. So cheers, stay safe, take care.
Okay, bye.